So in the last talk, which I hope you're all here to see, Caleb gave a really good talk on exploiting .NET deserialization, excuse me, vulnerabilities. And in that talk, he talked about taking a piece of software, finding components like the client dependency, that may be a client dependency, finding vulnerabilities in those components, crafting an exploit for that component, finding a target that you may wish to exploit, doing some stuff to discover the version that they're running. You might be needing to tweak that exploit for that particular version. You throw the attack, you hope it works, and sends you back a shell, and you get access to that system. That's how most of the attack simulation red team kind of standard procedure there. In this talk, though, we're going to be flipping the script, and I'll show you how you can get your malicious code into the libraries that most software uses in the first place and own everybody who runs that piece of software across the world via supply chain attacks, and how you can do so cheaply, easily, quickly, and anonymously. So, welcome to the world of supply chain attacks. This is supply chain practical software supply chain attacks for everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some prior work. So there's been some kind of academic discussion of your supply chain attack patterns. This is even one done by MITR, talked really more focused on kind of the government procurement cycle and hardware focus, but there has been a lot of discussion for a long time about this. Flame was actually a really good example of this. A malware subverted Windows Update by intercepting the Windows Update requests from another system on the local subnet and inserting malicious code into those requests. It used a MD5 collision, which had never been done before, which was essentially at that time groundbreaking cryptographic break to forge those signatures. And strangely, the attackers have not stepped forward to claim credit or provide further details. I wonder why that is. We also have, it would also fall under the same definition to talk about loading malicious code into app stores. Now, this isn't really the focus of this talk, and it's not really a new attack, but it is something to pay attention because, again, supply chain attacks, code coming from places where you obtain your normal applications, app stores also fall under that. So this is harder to perform anonymously because in order to sign up for a developer account, you have to provide identifying documents, you have to pay money, you have to do all kinds of stuff. And so as a result, most people who are putting unwanted code into the app stores, which let's face it is quite a bit of the apps in the app stores, are doing so skirting the legal line so that they can essentially excuse what they're doing. So for example, most VPN apps and app stores have probably code in there which you are not going to be a fan of. In one Google Play Store analysis in 2019, there's a Chinese backdoor embedded in lots and lots of different applications within the Play Store. We've also seen them embedded into OEM images that are pre-installed on phones from some of the smaller and shadier providers of vendors of phones. And early versions could then use that access to root their phones and escalate privileges. Here you can see on the right, there's a brief analysis of some mobile VPN apps found quite a bunch of them didn't encrypt traffic or anything else. The questioning saying, couldn't we exploit these by exploiting the libraries or frameworks they might be using in their apps? Yes, that's certainly a potential. And we'll talk about that kind of from that angle from really any app distribution is getting into those libraries. The Kingslayer breach was another really cool one worth mentioning. This was a compromise of Altair Technologies. Altair made software for sysadmins, which was super effective. Hit by compromising that software, they were able to gain access to 5 major defense contractors, major telecommunications providers, military institutions, Fortune 500 companies, banks, and all kinds of educational institutions. Just as an example of a successful attack, it works really well when you can get that level of access. Because again, you're not just exploiting software used by one particular system or even by one particular organization. You're putting malicious code into software used by a large number. And then, of course, there was the infected firmware that Apple found in its servers from Supermicro. And this is my favorite part of this whole story, was that at the time of publication, the firmware was downloaded directly from Supermicro's support site and still hosted there. So that was another fun one. I think it would fall under the category of supply chain attack. Question about Xcode Ghost. That one, that name is not real familiar to me. That might be one of the ones which I've heard of, but I don't remember the details on that one. So I'll punt on that question. So the hardware supply chain is also an option, as in the notorious 2008 alleged breach, where allegedly Russians allegedly supplied thumb drives in Kabul, Afghanistan, which got picked up and plugged into US military systems and allegedly got access to allegedly things. At least that's what the news report said. Another example of that is ones that penetration testers sometimes send out with like kid spoofing devices, which you plug it in, it acts like a keyboard, and then launches a shell. So those are also there as well. So why software supply chain attacks? Well, it's obviously awesome if you can get this access. It's very, very difficult to detect or differentiate an evil software install from a good software install, because it's coming from the same place you expect. And of course, you haven't seen it before, especially for updates. There, you don't expect to, so you can't use necessarily reputation because, hey, it's an update, nobody's seen it until today anyway. You also have the vast scale of compromising people who have enormous amounts of access. There was a comment that was pretty popular a few years ago. A slide came out talking about hunting sysadmins, because if you hunt sysadmins, you get access to everything they manage. Well, wait till you hunt developers, because they get code running on way more systems. But there's kind of this interpretation that supply chain attacks require some kind of world-class exploitation skills or cryptographic miracles or some special physical or organizational location that will enable you to get access to this that ordinary people can't do. And so what I want to show is that that's not the case, and that we can still get access to so much of this stuff. So some considerations. This is how we're going to be grading our supply chain attacks. First of all, can we launch it anonymously? If strong attribution is required, it becomes a lot more annoying, because then you need to go to extreme efforts to set up shell companies, covert payment methods, blah, 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 like getting an app in an app store. We want to avoid that because we're lazy. Are there any other barriers to submitting packages or launching the attacks? Every offensive group is resource limited, and most are task saturated. It's the sad fact of life for offense. It's just true. If it's going to take too much time and resources, not going to be fun to do. How many actions does it require the user make? Ideally, this thing comes on without them doing anything other than usual. And again, how specific is it to a particular operating system privilege level, that kind of thing as well. How widely can we spread this? And then does it execute immediately, or does it require something else to happen later on? Yes, that is a samurai sword. This is from, anyway, long story, samurai sword. So first thing I'm going to be talking about is package manager pwnage. And this is all stuff I've done. And importantly, this is all stuff that has happened over, it's been a long time. I'm going to be talking about a lot of different things which I've done. And it's going to go over like about the past 5 years. So some of this stuff might not be, there might be slight differences if you're pulling off some of these today. I just want to make you be aware of that. And of course, Sharknado images for everything, because it's the greatest series of cinematography that the world has ever seen. So package manager overview. So what is a package manager? Well, it's a big collection of libraries for a programming language. Most of the time, these programming languages will have a primary online repository that is serving all of their posted open source libraries. These tools often support private repositories as well, but most people just use the public ones. And oftentimes there's a command line tool to easily install a package and all of its dependencies. And every major programming language has one, even if the language people didn't start out by creating one. Usually a community has shown up and created one for them. If you want to run anything but the simplest program, you're going to need to use code which has been provided in these libraries from usually many different sources. And most big production applications that we see running are incorporating dozens and dozens of these dependencies as a result. So for example, if you're in Python, depending which criteria you use, Python may be the most popular programming language out there, and you want to run special numerical calculations and use kind of fancy math, you might want to install NumPy in your code. So you run pip install NumPy, hit enter, and boom, it installs your package for you. You can now use that library in any of your code or any of your Python scripts. And the installs can be run as user or root. So again, and we'll see the same thing again and again on a number of them. Developer creates a package, submits that to the package manager, user types the install command, and then boom, it's all automatically downloaded and installed. So the first attack that we'll see on a lot of these is typo attacks. So many of these developers and scripters are installing these packages manually, usually by running commands such as that pip install command. They're typing it by hand, and guess what? They frequently miss a letter, hit a neighboring key, and whatever package they type in and hit enter and request is installed without confirmation in nearly all of the package managers. Second one is the wrong manager attack. And so this is fun because developers often have to switch between one environment or one technology to a different environment or technology. And so if you are familiar with one library in one particular system and you want the equivalent library in another particular language, you often will accidentally install the same package. And even though you've typed the name of it correctly, it's from the wrong repository and it's actually a different one. Will I provide a list of libraries with me recordings? Is it best to get in there and play around? You can. I'll share my slides after this, and you can see everything that is available in there in answer to the question in chat. So, if you pick a package with the same name as a popular package in one repository, you can often get tons of installs in a different repository. Third attack is an evil repository attack. So this is going after the repository itself. People are assuming that repositories themselves are trustworthy. If they're using mirrors, that those mirrors are vetted. They're assuming that maybe the packages themselves are verified, or are the mirrors trusted? How are they verified? And is that connection authenticated and encrypted? All different points at which you could attempt to launch attacks. And as we'll see, we can successfully launch attacks or have in the past. Last, I think this is the last big one here, is the account takeover. So the security and authentication for package maintainers is actually really bad across the board. And yet these package managers enable unbelievable levels of access, right? So what I'm talking about is the developers who are the real developers behind some of these very popular packages. In order to follow this flow of creating a package, uploading that, all that kind of stuff, they then frequently save credentials, which if you got access to that developer system, could be automatically stolen and reused and even wormed throughout this. Another thing is the fact that a lot of these open source developers, because again, these packages which are used by so many different programs are frequently the open source packages, and the more popular they are, the more frequently they get bug reports and contributions and patch submissions and all that kind of stuff. And the standard development flow that people use in order to handle this is by using things like, most commonly GitHub, and you're using things like pull requests. And they save time because instead of checking out the entire new repository that somebody else sent you and figuring out what the changes are, you simply check out that branch, pull down that branch, and then you test it on your system. And again, this only saves time if you're doing it on the same system you do development from. And this is the system where you have your own private SSH key and all this kind of stuff. And so as a result, a lot of times through this workflow, it's not the same flow that you use to try to trick a user into running code, but through this workflow, developers are actually running more untrusted code than others. And you might say, yeah, but these guys are top-notch, very intelligent guys. Surely they're going to review the code diffs before they check out and run it. And that is true. They do most often review the code diffs, but frequently those code diffs are going to be pulling in another dependency, and I guarantee you they don't review recursively all of the code and all of the dependencies that they're pulling in. And so oftentimes you can target a developer of one of these very popular packages by simply submitting something to their project and putting your malicious code, I'm sorry, not malicious, your value added code into a dependency that you're then providing to them. They then execute that and go. And I say this because I've done a lot of in years past, done a lot of the community development for Metasploit, and so I saw this all the time. You see tons of code coming in, and that's certainly what I was worrying about when I was doing that. Okay, so now let's talk about applying these attacks, making this into a real world. First of all was Python. We talked about pip a little bit before, the command line client to the PyPI repository, which is short for Python Package Index, and it has all of Python's packages in that. Now, if you want to submit a package, you have to create an account on pypi.python.org. How do we do that? How do we get our targets? Well, let's check that out. So first thing you do is you go to the registration page. This is the registration page. You need a username, password, and email address. That's it. You can do it from any domain. You can do it from Tor. When I did it, a few years ago, it did not even confirm the email. So you could just put whatever you want, ta-da, you've got an account. Now you want to target packages. So which packages do you want to target? Well, thankfully, there's this PyPI ranking site, which tells you the number of installs that each package has. And you can see, hey, look, these packages, all the top packages were installed by tens of millions of people, or at least tens of millions of times. So now how do we create a package? Well, very simple process. You can take a template that you can find online, or you can actually check out any of the existing packages and edit them if you want. It's essentially a small zipped folder. It can have as little as 2 or 3 small text files in it. One of those is going to be a setup.py file. When you're done, you run python setup.py upload. It uses a library to do that upload to PyPI. The first time you run this, it asks you for the password and username that you registered with. As soon as that completes, then it uploads. Then that package is immediately visible on PyPI, and anyone who types pip install your package name, hits enter, is now going to immediately download and run your package. So it's great. Now, how do you get code execution when somebody does that? Well, that's actually extremely trivial. All the packages have a setup.py file as mentioned in them. The setup.py file is executed immediately upon install. You can add any Python code to this file that you want, and it will be executed as soon as that person hits enter. So is this why Docker was created, to avoid something like this? Well, it is one of the side benefits of Docker, that's for sure. Although, to be clear, for supply chain attacks, you can certainly post. Docker is actually something which I didn't put in here. I thought about it because you can upload your own images to Docker as well and download and install them. Now, hopefully those images are not going to have access to the rest of the system, assuming you don't have a container breakout. But what do people use Docker containers for? Well, they use them to wrap up some application or to wrap up some database or something like this. So you might not be able to see the rest of the system, but all you can see is all of the data going into the application and its database. And you can use that as a pivot to attack anything else within that network if they're using kind of a bastion host firewall architecture. So there's still usually quite a bit you can do, even if they do use Docker, because usually there's quite a bit that by necessity the application has to have access to. So you're getting your code into Python setup.py. Let's go to what happens after the exploit. So as we mentioned previously, so as soon as you do that, everybody hits enter on that and installs, you've got code execution all over the place, right? Now, let's say we wanted to go a step further and steal credentials to an existing user who has one of the real, not relying on typo, put code into a real legitimate popular package out there. So as we mentioned previously, pip upload asks for your password the first time it's run. Wonder what happens. How come it doesn't need to ask for your password the second time you upload something or upload a new version? Well, that's because, ta-da, it creates this little text file called the .pypirc, which is in your home folder. And guess what's in that text file? It helpfully saves your username and your password in plain text, just like it's shown and documented in that web page for you. So anybody who can then access that file can then post a malicious update to all of the packages that that developer has rights over, and can then infect everyone who's installing that original package, even if they don't make any typos. Keys to the kingdom, again, for as many as hundreds of millions of systems. There is no two-factor authentication, not at the time I looked at them. Single arbitrary file read is owned. Has that ever happened? Oh, yes, that has happened. How about a configuration file, plausibly included in troubleshooting debug outputs? So, yep, you would also be owned if that configuration file leaked as a result of even just a debug data collection. You accidentally leave that file around as part of a backup where it's accessible, guess what, you're owned. And if you think about it, there may even be a worldwide engine that could search trillions of web pages and see if anybody has ever posted their PyPI RC onto the internet. And oh my goodness, look at all that. So you forget that existed because it's a hidden file? Yep, Question, could you make that setup Py prompt the developers saying they need to run it as root, trick them into doing that? Yes, but you could certainly do a prompt at that point. You've got code execution, you can do whatever you want. However, hold on that for 1 second, because I created a couple of packages similar to popular packages a few years ago, made sure that they had a dependency of the original packages. So this is just to be nice, because if somebody installs one of my typo packages, they then got the real package as well. So all of their code would still work. They would still be able to use all that because the real package is installed as well. All it did then was ping a stat collector on the install. Next, I reviewed the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act 2 or 3 times to make sure I had no problems. Made sure CFA criminalizes accessing a computer without authorization. I made sure I didn't take any unauthorized access, didn't leave any backdoors or arbitrary code execution, didn't pull any creds or anything else. Push to PyPI. How to check if you're compromised by, well, you're not compromised by me now because I didn't leave anything there, and those packages are gone now. If it's somebody else, well, they could have done anything, so I can't really answer that question. So I went ahead and pushed those to PyPI, waited a few days, and you know how everybody does those, like, you know, threat actor map takedowns where they show, hey, here's everybody that they compromised. Well, of course, we have to do one for this as well. So after a few days, I had all of the countries in blue calling back to me, which is effectively most places in the world that had computers. There were 442 installs from 216 different IPs from 147 different cities and 45 different countries. And a lot of times those IPs are natted, and so you'd see a lot of installs, let's say at like a university or something behind it. And so lots of success. And to go back to the question in the Red Team questions room, almost all of them were already run as root, because who wants to pip install something when you're just running as a user? Instead, they're trying to install something else and get it working. So almost every case, they ran it as root, and so you already had root and didn't need to ask them for it, which is great. I just love it. So next, take a look at node.js. So Node has a package manager called NPM, which stands for Node Package Manager. If you want to submit a package to Node, you need to require an account on npmjs.com. How are those packages uploaded? How can you select those targets? Let's go find out. You need an email, just like PyPI. Looks slightly better. You can do it from Tor. It does not verify your email. Just put whatever you want. At least when I tried it, did not verify your email. Or you can even run a command, npm add user, and just type in something, and it works great. So now you have an account. Now you want to target particular packages. Which packages do you want to target with downloads? Well, you can go to the NPM website, and they will tell you they are very proud of the stats. You can see over here on the right for one particular package. In fact, the top packages are getting tens of thousands or millions of downloads in just a matter of weeks or months. So millions of downloads per month. And this is my favorite. You see this part here in the upper right a little bit there? It'll tell you who all the collaborators are. It will tell you everybody who has access to push to this. Like, do you know you just made all those people targets? I don't know, but it's cool. They're proud of themselves, so good for them. Now, you want to create a package similar to PyPI, easy process. You put 2 or 3 small text files in a package. You can use templates. You can copy things. When you're ready, you run npm login, which you type in your password for, and then you run npm publish. And guess what? You only need to run npm login the first time. If you didn't use npm add user, npm login will prompt you for the password, and then as soon as you publish, packages will be immediately visible on npm and installable with npm install. So somebody types enter, what happens? Your package gets downloaded. Now you want to get code execution immediately, of course, because you don't want to wait because you're impatient and you're lazy. So inside this package, you have an install.json file. Inside the package.json file or the install.json file, you set a script. You can see the little JSON blurb right there. You can put a .js file, which will then be executed under NPM as a full user, or you can actually put whatever command you want to run in there, and it will execute an arbitrary command on install immediately. And you can also have some on uninstall and other stuff, but who would want that? So we can put our packages up there easily, quickly, anonymously, freely. We can get them running by anybody who types a typo. We can then get access, code execution immediately and do whatever we want. Now let's talk about what we can do after that point. Can we then switch that to warming or target one of these developers and put it into a legitimate package without a typo? So npm login is a separate step. Why might that be? Well, because of course it caches, in this case, an authentication token, which is basically equivalent to your password. And here it is in .npmrc in your home folder. Again, keys to the kingdom for as many as millions of systems per month. Single arbitrary file read, you're all owned. Configuration file you accidentally leaked, you're all owned. If you forget it existed because it's hidden file, you're all owned. You accidentally leave this backup file around, you're all owned. No 2-factor authentication that I saw. So I was looking at candidates for typo squatting this. This was a few years ago. This is one of the first ones I took a look at. And somebody named Alec Baldwin posted a blog post where he talked about a malicious NPM experiment. And now then I had the grumpy cat face because somebody else published before me, so oh well. But he went a step further, and I just love his gall because he went straight up to the NPM maintainers and he said, hey guys, I'm curious what you could get from typos attacks. Can you give me your logs and tell me everybody, all of the typos that you get? And they're like, sure, here you go. And so he got the full logs of, yes, the presentation will be provided in answer to the question in the channel. And so he got the logs and found the top one had tens of thousands of hits. He also did some analysis on what typos were the most common. The most common was actually dropping punctuation, because a lot of these have multiple words, so it's some hyphen package. But people would say, oh, just install some package, and then somebody would type in some package without the hyphen. Or they would drop a double letter just because it's easy to accidentally hit a letter once instead of twice. Those are kind of the top ones that you should target. So lessons learned, do a little research before you just make up guessing at package typo names, and that typos are everywhere, just like sharks in a Sharknado movie. So I did think Node was interesting because they also have a commercial offering for a trusted repository, which is provided by Node Source, a startup. For the low price of $1,000 a month, you too could use certified modules in your program instead of just ordinary modules. And I looked at what it would take to get a module certified. Well, you would need to have essentially a GitHub repository with versioning, tests, coherent metadata, updates, and source control. As far as I can tell, they don't actually review any of the code for backdoors. So I bet if you spend a little bit of time, you could even get your malicious code into the trusted module store as well, although I didn't go to that trouble. Next was Ruby. Now, Ruby was slightly different. Ruby uses a package manager called RubyGems. You can go to the RubyGems homepage and you'll see the numbers are now far bigger than this, but at the time I took this screenshot, you had 12 billion downloads and counting. And if you look at the gem command line command, you'll see that RubyGems is a, wait, what is that? What does it say? A sophisticated package manager for Ruby. Sophisticated. How sophisticated? Probably the sophisticated. So that means clearly it will be more secure, right? Don't we expect that? Well, for starters, they have a bug bounty through HackerOne. If you find a vulnerability in RubyGems client library, then you would be able to report a security issue and get a bounty from that. However, none of our attacks so far would have fallen under the scope for that bounty, so So to sign up for RubyGems, you need an email, but RubyGems verifies your email. So you actually need to have a real email. But that's it. All domains are allowed, Tor is allowed, it's free, it's easy, it's automatic. If you want to target popular packages, again, just like most of the other repositories, they're very proud of which ones have lots of downloads. The top ones have hundreds of millions of downloads. And you can find many of these gems, that's over 10 of them have over 100 million downloads. So you can target one of those. You want to submit a package? Well, just like PyPI or any of the others, easy process, small zipped up file with 2 or 3 small text files. You can then publish your gem just by running gem push. It will ask for your email and password, then it will push it to rubygems.org. Guess what? You only need to enter your password the first time when you log in. That package will be immediately visible on RubyGems and installable with gem install. I would submit my own bugs and get the bug bounty for it. Actually, I wouldn't, but they only accept bugs in the actual RubyGem library, not in all of the gems posted. So not in the public code, just in the RubyGem library itself, which is much smaller, sadly. Next, you want to get code execution on gem install. Well, that's also very trivial. Every gem includes a gem spec configuration file. Inside the gem spec, you simply define an extension, and the extension is then executed immediately upon install. So ext rmagic xconf.rb in this example is a very common one, and your Ruby code will be running immediately as soon as somebody types gem install that. Yeah, so only needing to put in your password once. What could happen there? Well, guess what? That gets saved to .gem/credentials, and it gives you an API key, just like NPM. Guess what? Same thing, hundreds of millions of systems might be owned. If you grabbed one of these, no 2FA, single arbitrary file read or leak or backup, ta-da, you get access. So what are some of the good parts here? Well, in the Hacking with Gems presentation, somebody talked about potential for some of these to be malicious and inspired a lot of security protocols. They now have the ability to cryptographically sign gems. However, when I checked, it required a lot of manual steps, and nobody had actually done that, and they didn't have a coherent method of figuring out whose signatures were trusted. So you essentially just generated your own, and as a result, signatures aren't checked or required by default. So, and when I last checked, only one of the top 10 gems was signed. So that's not really doing anything right now. But here, even if you did that, you would run gem cert -- build, and it would drop your files into the .gem with your private key and your public cert into the .gem folder in your home directory. So if you're going to leak the other tokens, you'd probably leak these too. Next was R. So R was pretty fun, and R was different. Yes, Metasploit would be great. I actually thought about that and then never actually finished completing that. But it's pretty easy to script with just a standard command. So R. Now, R is a less popular programming language. It's much further down the list because it's not really so much a normal programming language as a statistics language. It has a repository called the Comprehensive R Archive Network, or CRAN, which is used to share modules for R. Again, this is a statistics language most commonly used by data analysis people, not so much by your normal developers. And for those people, however, it is probably the most particular statistics and data analysis language. Doesn't have as many installs, though, nearly as some of the general purpose languages like Python and Ruby and that kind of thing. So why would I target R? Well, let's go to the wisdom of Willie Sutton, the infamous bank robber, who was asked, Willie, why do you rob banks? He says, because that's where the money is. Well, why do we get the data analysis language? Because that's where the data is. People are doing all kinds of data analysis frequently with private data using R. That's why they're downloading it and installing it. And so that's where we go to get the data. So how do you install a package in R? Well, the first thing you do is within their little console, you type in install.packages, and then you provide the package name as a string there as an argument. You want to find out, again, you're just typing a command. In this case, it's within their own console, but you're basically just the same thing, typing a command, typing the name, hitting enter, and it runs. If you want to figure out which packages you can target, well, here you again have a stats page that you can get to check how popular they are. The top ones will have millions of downloads over a period of months. If you want to submit a new package, you go straight to the CRAN site. You put in a name, you put in an email, you upload your package, and if you want, you can type a comment, which is then apparently manually reviewed. Now, there are over 10,000 existing packages, and not that many people to review them, and the same submission is used for updates as well. So, does anybody see any issues here? It's a little bit different than before. There is no login, there is no password, there is no token. It's just open. So, with CRAN, you don't need to steal anybody's keys. You don't need to steal, hey, how dare you? You're not authorized to access those. No, I'm just kidding. It's on Google. So you don't need to steal somebody's key, compromise the developer's package. You can go straight to the most popular packages and submit an update for them. And there's nothing else required. And all the required information is also already published. The package maintainer's email, name, all this kind of stuff. I didn't try this because I actually found, well, we'll get to an even better attack, if imaginable. So I'm not sure if any notifications will be sent. That could happen, but still, you might be able to simply submit an update to a popular package without anything. Now, if this is manually reviewed, you might want to be a little more clever with your non-obvious vulnerable code or backdoor, but that's not very difficult. I have an example here. You could put curl whatever as part of your package, and then you end up executing that. And you end up slipping in a command injection flaw. So it's very easy to add vulnerabilities which only you could exploit, and you could come up with your own as well. But wait, it gets even better, because what happens when you install R on the packages? Well, I took a bunch of screenshots on an old Windows 7 VM. So you want to install R, you type R into Google, of course. The first thing you get is the R project. You click on that, you get to this page. Over there, you see a download on the left. You click on that, you go to the CRAN mirror page. What does it give you? It gives you a giant list of mirrors. That's interesting. So then you click on a mirror, probably from your country, or you just follow the link at the top, which will then pick one for you, essentially. It will then download that. It is an exe. It was unsigned. It then asks for full administrator access, and you keep clicking yes, because of course you do, and everybody clicks yes, and you give it access to your system. Then that installs, then R pops up like this. Then if you wanted to install, so there's lots of places you can imagine in that process which could have gotten compromised. But even if you didn't get them done, suppose they install a new package. So here's the install.packages command. You hit enter. Ask if you want to use a personal library. No, everybody's going to use the public library. Then it pops up this list of mirrors, and you scroll down to one from your country, and then you click OK, which in this case, US, you see California, Texas, Tennessee. That then downloads. You see that going down, and then boom, it's installed. So let's talk about these mirrors, because in either of those pathways, it's very likely that you are going to download a package from a mirror, which is set up through CRAN. And in contrast with all these other package managers, CRAN relies almost exclusively on mirrors. They do have one kind of cloud paid for one, but mostly they're just using random people who are volunteering to host their packages. So mirrors to download the installer, and another mirror, which is reselected when you're downloading packages. Package verification, by the way, is done via MD5. That's non-ideal, but hey, nobody's done a preimage against MD5, so that should be okay. But wait a minute, where does it get the MD5 from? Well, as it turns out, the MD5s for all the files in the package are specified in the package. So you could edit any MD5, edit any file in there and then just replace the MD5 in the same package, and guess what? It works just great. These are not signed by an external key that only CRAN has or something like that. Half the mirrors are also on HTTP. So even if you just had network access, you could then spoof your download from that. But that only matters for the initial download. When you do the install layer, HTTPS mirrors are preferred. But that's okay, because how does one become a mirror? Let's see if we could do that. So you go to the mirror page. It gives you a little how-to. Essentially what you do is you set up a web server with a bunch of free space. You set up rsync and some Apache configs. Come up with a good reason why they should add you. And you send them an email. So I thought, why not? Installed rsync, set up a little script on a box that I wasn't using, hanging off my Wi-Fi network upstairs, sent an email from scriptjunkie at scriptjunkie.us. Yes, coming from a hacking domain with a site which is nothing but hacking. Can I host a mirror? Yep, you bet. Again, I did not alter any packages. I was a nice mirror, but I'm just saying, right, I could have. And so what happens when I become a mirror? So over 10 days, I collected stats from downloads. There were 43,733 total packages downloaded by R coming across my wireless network from my box. Again, any of them I could have put some value added into. From 949 different unique IPs, and that was between 500 and 22,000 downloads per day. Again, this is only just 10 days. Over the course of a month, it would be even more. There are nearly 100 unique IPs per day. So each day we're seeing about 100 IPs that you've never seen before. And they're mostly from the US because, again, what did I do? I listed this as a US mirror from my state, which is Texas. But clearly those are listed by country, and you can set up a mirror in whatever target country you want, which is great because there are no mirrors for, last I checked, I don't know, Iran, pick your favorite, interesting country, right? You can set up a mirror in whatever target country you want and own everybody in the scientific data analysis, blah, 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 blah community who is then downloading stuff from that mirror. So question, that wraps up the R section. Now I'm going to take a look real quick at the a different one as an example for the typo squatting in the wild. I looked at Composer, which is the PHP repository, most popular server-side web programming language. They use the packagist repository to do that. You run php composer.far install after you've typed your packages into composer.json. And I did find that one of the most popular PHP packages is Laravel, but other people, which is Laravel/framework, but you can find other packages like Laravel/framework, which is really somebody else. Is it malicious? I didn't think so. Is it in the wild typo squatting? I think so. I think somebody's picking names which are very easily confused so they can get people to install their stuff. I didn't see any backdoors in that one, but people certainly do use this type of stuff, at the very least for advertising in the wild. Okay, so now let's flip to operating systems. We've talked about package managers and installers. Now let's talk about, for a language, now let's talk about that for an operating system. So Homebrew is the package manager for Mac OS, very popular among techie people using Macs. If you want to install a program, you type brew install wget and hit enter, and they say Homebrew will install the stuff you need that Apple didn't. If you want to submit a package, you have to do that via pull request to the Brew project. It has to be software which is established enough, but you can put whatever code you want inside the install method of that. However, again, you have to be a little tricky because they are manually analyzing that. Now, how do you install Brew in the first place, though? Well, you install it with a terminal command, which you copy and paste from brew.sh. And when I checked this, this was http://brew.sh. By the time I went ahead and then put this presentation together, they had actually installed an HTTPS cert and then auto-redirected to HTTPS, which is a little bit better. However, last I checked, the HTTP was still the default on Google. So if you could intercept that HTTP link, not do the redirect, put in your own command, then whoever's running this is then going to run that command instead. So one of the things is, how do you get operating systems themselves in the first place? Well, let's grab a random Linux distribution like Linux Mint and talk about that. So let's see here. How do you get one of these operating systems? Well, you Google for it, of course. Then you click the download link. That takes you to this download page. You click which version you want. And then what does it do? Well, it gives you a giant list of mirrors. There are 109 different download methods on the Linux Mint ISO download page. Of those, only one was secure, HTTPS. 108 were not. Was that true of the other distros? Yes, for almost all of them, except for Red Hat. Red Hat used HTTPS. Ubuntu, SUSE, Red Hat, CentOS were all HTTP. Debian, let's take a look at that because that was a little bit more interesting. So I went to Debian, consistently one of the top Linux distributions for all purpose. It's the root of probably all of the majority of Linux installs. So many derivative distributions like Ubuntu and everything come from Debian to start. So how do you get Debian? Well, you type in Debian, and then you go to the download page, and then depending on which one you click, you could wind up with a CD download on the right or the one on the left. If you follow the one on the right, then you get to mirrors of the Debian CD archive. If you follow the one on the left and just click the download install image, then you get a direct auto download from one of their servers. If you follow the mirror download process, you then get a list of files, which then downloads the ISO, and then there you go. Once again, it downloads over HTTP by default, redirects to mirror, manual mirror selection. So what if that was man, middle, intercepted, or modified? Well, thankfully for Debian, a little bit improvement on R, mirrors have a copy of the hashes and GPG signatures of the hashes signed with a Debian key that you don't have the private key for. But you still have to manually validate. So you have to download the ISO, download the checksum file, calculate and verify the hash against that downloaded hash file. And then you have to download the SIG file and verify the hash file against the SIG file, which you need to install then GPG to do so, and find and download the proper Debian key to get, and then you can do that verification. So do you think anybody actually does this? Did you even see instructions for doing that in the download process? I'll give you a hint, they were not there. And what if we didn't even need to intercept the HTTP request? Well, that's easy, because how do you become a Debian mirror? Well, you need about 2 terabytes of free space, you need a scheduled rsync, and you submit a web form with your email in it. So what do you think? Will the Debian root of most of Linux installs in the entire world add scriptjunkie at scriptjunkie.us, obvious hacker, to host a mirror? Yes, you bet. So as a side note, if you are going to do this, you can mirror your CDs and DVDs, just mirror the Debian CD repository. Don't mirror the package repository like I did with some friends, because that is a huge amount of space, and also you can't alter those because those are programmatically checked by signature, not the CD DVDs, which is the manual one, which is the one which is most easiest to fool with. So do people check their signatures? Well, I have the request logs, the Apache logs, to show you that no, they do not. And again, I did not, in this case, alter ISOs or serve malicious files, just took a look to see if I could. But do any of those other mirrors? I don't know. Could any of those other mirrors be compromised by somebody else who then would manipulate them? Maybe. A lot of these are in low security educational institutions or other locations where that might be the case. I trust them, but I don't trust that they haven't been compromised. So do your signature verification if you're on the client end. But that's not all. Debian when I last checked, was also looking for a maintainer for the Mirror selector. You could volunteer for a few hours, put together a little code, and then your code would control all of the ISO downloads for all of the default Debian downloads, which would be quite interesting. So that was fun. How to check if you're compromised or not? Well, again, you weren't compromised by me because I didn't alter anything. But are other people out there doing this? I don't know, maybe. Could they put whatever malicious code they wanted? Sure. Next was Mac OS. So while I was doing this a little bit ago, the Sierra update came out. I know there's been a few since then. And I noticed that their instructions for downloading the Sierra update was from Insecure App Store and Apple.com pages. So you click that upgrade now, then it redirects you to the installer. But because that path involves an HTTP page, if someone was intercepting your network traffic, they could then intercept that with a download to an entirely separate installer program, and you would think it came from macOS Sierra. Because those links, the HTTP links, could be replaced with a malicious one. So users really have no reason to not trust a package that they think got from the real Apple site. So that could be an issue. Let's see how Windows is doing. So that was Apple. Well, if you want to upgrade to Windows 10, I believe this is still available. After the initial free installs were disabled, you could still get the installs by going to this page, buy Windows 10 free upgrade for customers who use assistive technologies. You would then go to the page, click that upgrade now link, follow the HTTP requests, and if you didn't see those tiny requests at the bottom, it takes you from the secure accessibility Windows 10 upgrade link. You click the download link, it redirects you to HTTP, go Microsoft.com, blah, 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 which then 302 redirects to HTTPS, the real download, Windows 10 upgrade 24074.exe. And sure enough, it's an exe that you just download and run as administrator. So close, still fail. Again, for the HTTP man-in-the-middle attack, they would have redirected you to their own executable and provided something malicious for you to run. What can you do to make sure you don't fall for these? Well, in this case, if you're downloading it from Windows or Apple, check the signature and make sure it's validly signed by Microsoft and not by somebody else before you go ahead and execute that. So everyone's downloading their operating systems and binaries over HTTP. If we can't set up a mirror, how then do you man in the middle them? Well, you can hang around the coffee shop, do WPAD spoofing, something like that, intercept people's ARP spoofing, intercept people's requests from your local network. That's not real fun because you can only get a few people with that. You can also set up open proxies, which a lot of people use. You can run Tor exit nodes. You can host a free VPN. And this has happened before with Onion Duke, which was hosting value-added Tor exit nodes. So did it work? Yes, it did. How effective could it be? Pretty effective. And this was, yeah. So some of these stats. So what did I do? Well, I, of course, ran port 80 Tor exit nodes for a few weeks. Just kept a list of URL retrieved. Obviously, I have no idea who. I did not de-anonymize them or figure out what the next hop was. Just looking at requests. Here's a snapshot. On the right, you can tell it's an entire page of EXEs and zips and all kinds of stuff. I didn't mess with any of the downloads, just wanted to see what was coming through and would have been interceptable. There were thousands of executable files and packages downloaded. Again, this is for a few dollars worth of server resources or maybe just from your own home. A lot of those were software piracy related because what we'll find is that people go onto Tor when they're going to go download, some cracked version of some game, which is definitely malicious. If the original download wasn't malicious, then maybe somebody man-in-the-middling along there put in something malicious there. We found a lot of games in the same vein. There were a few legitimate software utilities as well, and a lot of malware as well. Some in-the-wild Chrome extensions. So this is another thing to point out as far as an in-the-wild attack. They can be easily installed by users. They can access everything you do online, which is basically all your data. And we've found a few of these in the wild as well by Malwarebytes. I'm running low on time, so I'm going to hurry up a little quick. So over to the summary. We showed with all this stuff we did that most programming language package managers pose significant security risks. You can get malicious packages by a typo or wrong command. That is made very easy by the fact that accounts are registered automatically and without any type of vetting, and publishing happens automatically without any type of vetting, although to be clear, they probably don't have the bandwidth to analyze tens of thousands of submitted packages. and they expose powerful credentials to many different attack models by caching those powerful credentials for the legitimate developers. The operating system package managers are more difficult because they're manual review, they're harder to poison, but nearly every operating system is acquired at some point insecurely and is unlikely to be verified by the user. And sure enough, we can do all that ourselves. Those man-in-the-middle attacks are practical against proxy VPN Tor users, and we became OS and package mirrors to show that anybody can quickly, cheaply, even freely, anonymously exploit massive numbers of people worldwide without any issues. And here's the fun part. At no point were we ever denied in our request. And like I said, we were not even being clever about who we were, right? We were never denied anything that we asked for. So that's very useful as well. So any package manager that was actually secure. So I pointed out how the Brew package manager did a lot of manual review. That's tough. I didn't check out Arch or Pacman. I will say most of the Debian, like the Debian package install process, was decent in the fact that they do manual review. All of their packages are signed. They don't trust the mirrors. But yeah, so it's a little bit more difficult because you have to first put together a package that people install, then go ahead and go from that. But yeah, supply chain attacks are happening in the wild now. And yeah, it's great for owning the planet. So I understand some of you are probably like work on blue teams or securing things and are probably wondering how to secure again. That's not really the point of this talk. The point of this talk is for the true offensive groups. And this is interesting because it often escapes detection because this type of thing is often out of scope for a red team or a penetration tester, but works great for true offense. So if we summarize this, hacking users, hunting sysadmins is better, hacking developers is better, hacking package manager dependencies is even better, package manager is even best, and then operating system distribution attacks will own everybody. So, any other questions?
Awesome. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think we have a couple of questions in here. I personally remember when this exact thing happened to the requests package in Python and pip, where some person did a master thesis where he basically did exactly this, where he put a request package, typo squatted, and he got like 1,000 requests, 1,000 installs over the course of a week or so. So like that's potentially 1,000 popped machines, and that's a hell of a thing. So yeah, definitely, this is definitely something to look out for. In terms of defense against this, God, it's difficult. You'd have to have a lot of processes in place, I'm assuming, but not like a lot of processes from like a developer standpoint to actually defend against this. But yeah, that was an awesome talk. Thank you. So let's see. I think you already answered most of the questions. Yeah,
I've been kind of doing it rolling.
Yeah, I've done it, which is awesome. So if anyone has questions, Senko RIG says, why not share the findings with the respective communities, or did I miss that part? Thanks for the great talk.
So part of that is the sharing the findings with the respective communities was the what's the word I'm looking for? So some of them, like the Pit ones and the Ruby ones, had already kind of documented that, and so I wasn't sure. I didn't really think I would add a whole lot more to that because they kind of knew that these things were in existence. They were just struggling with how to best address them because, again, it's a very hard problem. How do you know that you know what you know? It's very difficult. So yeah, that's definitely tough there. But also that also wasn't kind of the goal because lots of people have lots of reasons to get lots of shells, and this is for you guys.
Yep. Yeah, and I think also again from the Python perspective, because that's mainly what I do, but I think tools like pipenv have started creating checks for that kind of stuff. So like if you misspell the request package, it actually says, hey, you typed this, but are you sure you don't mean like the actual request package? So there was some things that have started been integrating into developers' workflow that try to mitigate this, but it's still difficult. Another question from GoToWebinar: has anything like this been detected in the wild from APT or government groups?
So yeah, and actually some of the examples that I used were from APT government groups, like Onion Duke I mean, nobody really wants to say, but some people alleged it was the Russian government. Nobody's for sure, right? And so, yeah, there's some of that. I will say I haven't seen as many of the package manager installs that way, but certainly some of the other supply chain attack distribution methods that we talked about were there.
Awesome. And I think we have time for only one more question. Vic says, how the package managers taking your study into their considerations in protecting users around the globe?
So like I said, some of them are trying to roll out things like signatures, but it's very difficult to retrofit the package distribution strategy that they're using to function on that. I think the most promising path is the path taken by some of the newer repositories like Brew and just straight up doing manual review of everything. Although even that, I would imagine you could bypass. It just takes more effort because you're trying to be non-obvious with your maliciousness. But I will say even some of the newer ones like the Rust repository, Cargo, almost same exact process as all of these others. You create yourself an account, upload whatever you want, it gets installed by whoever types that into their Cargo config and runs it.
Yeah, so I think really the best approach here really is like assume compromise, right? Again, goes back to that, and like build out your developer environment accordingly, assuming that your packages are compromised, which, yeah, so a lot of companies are not taking that into consideration, I think.
Right, yeah, one of the things that I do personally is try to keep all my builds in a VM. That's one thing you can do, but yeah, eventually you're probably going to end up running stuff on the host.
Yeah, Docker might mitigate some of this, I'd assume too, but I'm also a Docker expert, so I don't know if.
Yeah, Docker can limit the privileges of what you're running, so.
Okay, awesome. That's good to know. Well, thanks, Matt. Just as a reminder,